I'm here today with Lil Copan, who just released her first novel, Little Hours. Lil is an editor, writing coach, workshop leader, arts columnist, and painter, and has been a featured speaker at several of our conferences. Lil serves as senior acquisitions editor at Broadleaf Books, which is part of 1517 Media. You might know it better as what used to be the trade book group of Fortress Press. She previously worked in acquisitions for several other religious publishing houses, Erdman's, Abingdon, Ave Maria, Paraclete, among others. Lil's worked with an impressive array of best-selling authors, including Madeline L'Engle, Scott McKnight, Debbie Blue, Amy Frycolm, Thomas Lynch, and Lauren Winter. And she acquired Frederick Buechner's Faces of Jesus for Paraclete in 2004, which is amazing, and was credited by Jana Reese in a 2011 Publisher Weekly interview for having brilliantly suggested the concept of her book, Flunking Sainthood. So those are all incredible people that you had a chance to work with, Lil, and I'm so glad that now you've written your own book. So thanks for joining us here.
Thanks for having me. It's so great. Appreciate it.
So we've done a lot of things together, and this is the first book that I've ever interviewed about your own book. So that's just kind of thrilling, I think, for both of us. But yeah. In any event, I just kind of briefly touched on your background, but you've done so many different things. Can you kind of dive into that a little bit more deeply?
Sure. I mean, it has been publishing, writing, and the arts very consistently for me. And, my interest has continually been with any publishing house I've worked with. And the reason I was brought into any house was to work with trade books. So this real interest in faith-informed writing and spirituality that has a broad reach, that reaches more of a general readership, has been my goal and interest.
Well, maybe could we touch on a couple of the folks that I mentioned that you worked with? From Madeline L'Engle first. What did you do with Madeline L'Engle?
I worked with a couple of the books. One of the collections that she wrote with Lucy Shaw.
Oh, good. Okay.
So I worked with both of them. There was another editor who also did the majority of the work with the publishing house that Lucy Shaw founded, Harold Shaw.
Oh, right.
And so it was great to work with her and have that opportunity. Very much a joy to work with both of them on that project.
I can imagine, absolutely. I mean, they're both legends. And Frederick Buechner, Faces of Jesus, is a very different book for him. And for people who are not familiar with it, it's got great artwork in addition to the text. How did that happen?
So, yeah, it was really interesting. He had earlier written that book, and it was full color. And I realized that a lot of the text was so, devotionally oriented toward sort of reading gospel text and thinking about the life of Jesus and the face of Jesus, not only in image, but in word. So I sort of pitched, the reconception of the book that leaned more into text and explorations. And that came to be, and it's been just, a book that's been beloved by many people who may not have seen it as an art book primarily.
Yeah, I think I've seen at least 3 different versions of that book.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely wonderful, as are all of his books. So congratulations on that too.
Thank you. So
I have to ask you, after all these years, what motivated you to write your own book, and how did it happen? How did it come about?
Well, I have, any editor is, as they say, an aspiring writer. So that's something that's often working in the background for many co-editors, editors that I've worked with, but also for me. I was in a writing program in college and very interested in creative work, and always had something going in the background. This came to be actually with a very simple question. I was part of a writing group called Kitchen Table Writers in the Boston area, and I had gone on sort of a spiritual retreat to a local monastery, and was just telling them about it. And one person just popped in with, I want, like, I want to go, I want to go on retreat. I want to learn about that. And, but I wouldn't know what to do, like with my husband, my family. I have so much going on. And so in the writing group, which just works with prompts, I just started diving in, and a voice was created and a response was created, and it took form from there.
Well, it's a really unique book in several different ways that we'll get into. One of which is that it has what look to be at surface level really unrelated themes. So Boston Red Sox, nuns, bird watching, farming, et cetera, et cetera. And so how did you weave those together into a novel?
Yeah, I don't know if they wove as much as they were sort of, I tried to imagine these kind of different individuals with very different interests and histories, and I didn't want, the research was daunting for that. And I thought, I'm going to work with what I have. I mean, one aspect of me is, baseball. I mean, I was new to the Boston area, and I felt there was so much that was happening in terms of community around baseball. And I would sometimes walk this elderly woman who went at first to every game with her husband, and then he was hospitalized, and then she would go to every game and, take the train home. And I just was worried for her in our neighborhood, and would like walk her home after baseball games, and we would chat. And but just sort of seeing that fandom, and just bringing things together locally, very interested in birding and birding communities. I just started trying to find places that either worked naturally, or it just came in as I was trying to write into these individual characters.
So are you a birder or bird watcher yourself?
I am so amateur. It is discouraging, but I'm avid, and and I did work with. I had several readers from Audubon, one from the South Shore Audubon, and others who made sure that I was putting correct birds in correct locations in correct seasons, with correct iterations. Any mistakes are mine.
So you mentioned, there's also the Red Sox, Boston Red Sox, that are, part of this book too. And for people who are not familiar with the Boston area and what Red Sox Nation means, can you kind of add a little flavor for that?
It is, well, one of the characters is spiritually devout, a Catholic nun, and an avid Red Sox fan. And it is life for many. It is really like the neighbor that I had, it was her, 17 seats above, third base, every game, every home game. And there's this kind of dedication that is just profound and sometimes agonizing when they're playing rival teams. And the book takes place very much in the sort of rivalry between the Boston Red Sox and the Yankees. So.
Yes, I mean, one of the most infamous rivalries of all of sports, right?
Right. If you can hold a grudge for, many, many decades, that's what those teams represent. Sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's so interesting, that it's an escape, I mean, right? To a large degree, people have their day lives, and up in Boston, area, it's a lot of people who are professors or, teachers, or in high tech or medicine, in very different ways. So nothing, to do with sports, right? But, being a Red Sox fan, is very meaningful across that entire spectrum. So
it sure is. I mean, to me, it's, some kind, it is a gathering. And I think that's something about birding too, that you'll have, somebody working down the street, in the garage, in the car garage, auto body shop, who joins a birding group with, professors, with other locals, with, the guys, fishing for their next meal off of some of the piers, and it's community forms.
yes, yes. Well, it'll be interesting to see, with the pandemic now, hopefully easing off, I have to believe that community will look very much like what it did before, if not more involved.
Yeah. Oh.
I hope. So many of the people that have like reviewed the book or endorsed the book have talked about how it feels very real, that your characters feel very real. What do you attribute that to?
I think I attribute that to often that, as we spoke about earlier, the eclectic nature of, a farm, chickens, a donkey, the Red Sox, spirituality, the things that come together that seem unlikely and that are convincing. And in the way that I try to engage my own interests for this, channel them for the sake of the novel, I think that also brought a sense of not just like research, but a sort of like a beating human heart behind each of the characters, their interests, their motivations, as maybe aspects of myself that I could channel in very different directions.
Very cool. So I think I know part of the answer to this question at least, but you were very specific about the time frame when this book was set, kind of the 2003-2005 time frame. Can you talk about why that was the case?
Sure. Well, any Red Sox fan will know that there were World Series involved in those years, and after such a long losing streak, the Red Sox made good on so many people's hopes. But it is in that sense, just I think in terms of this community of nuns, in terms of people who think about spirituality, about gathering, about what it means, I think there's, it seemed like a particular time to bring in something that was very immediate. And I started writing a long time, quite a while ago, clearly, and into that space. So, I think that responding both in real time to some of the events that were local made a difference for that kind of engagement. And it also, I think, feels like a little particular piece of history for a city, and, for land, and for some of the aspects of birding too, and conservation. So I think those felt right for the time. It would, if written now, it would be a very different exploration.
Interesting. So speaking of now, 2021 is supposed to be the year of the nun. What's that all about?
I mean, I think there's been so much interest in the nuns, NONES, as well as I think this movement of consideration about religious sisters who often are invested in communities and seem to be, while there is the hierarchy of the church, I think there's this sense of these women working in justice, working in different communities, that doesn't have the fraughtness of a a church on fire with abuse, with accusations. So I think it's partially removed and very much revered. And I think there have been several articles that have come out where this sort of looking to the wisdom of, women religious is really important.
So a lot of the books that you've worked on over time kind of, bridge the gap in some sense between secular and spiritual.
Mhm.
Having a lot of deep meaning, but not overtly or preachy Christian or anything else. So it sounds like this book is in that same kind of flavor. Can you talk about that balance and that tension?
So it's odd. I mean, it's front and center. It's a group of nuns. It does speak to spirituality. It does, you know, explore sort of these profoundly human experiences and spiritual experiences, even as I have I'm very interested in the non-schismatic of religion, of faith, of explorations in of the spiritual life, so that there's a way in which somebody who might not be in a tradition might be warm to what feels so human about it. I mean, and maybe that's baseball, or maybe it's birding, or maybe it's, whatever, but that it allows a reader to be invited in on their terms in some ways. And I think fiction can do that, that you put your identities with the characters or not, but you can appreciate an engagement. I've had several people send me, emails, letters saying that they're in the hard sciences. They've never considered religion. They don't like spirituality. It's too woo-woo. And that there's something about the book that they took great interest in, delight in. And I think that's because it's that intention to speak to what we all share.
Very cool. Well, it sounds like you were successful in that. So that's pretty cool. So another kind of unique aspect of the book is that it's written in letters. How did you choose that type of a format?
I could not tell you. I mean, in that, first conversation with a group of writers, and, this woman asking a question, and then it was the only, I thought it needs a response from somewhere, and then it just took a letter form, and it just kept going in letters. And I've always been interested in, and some are more successful than others in terms of letters and that dynamic and being able to keep a pace going. But, some of my treasured books are those that are those kinds of personal engagements back and forth that reveal, it's little hours, kind of the quieter life in that sense.
So you and I have talked many times about this tension within the publishing industry, the book industry today, between marketing and writing, right? The traditional model of being an author and the newer model that requires much, much more in terms of consumer engagement and kind of being out there, quote unquote, with your brand, quote unquote. So what's your approach been to that? And how have you, answered the call, so to speak?
Yeah. I have as an editor, having worked with many writers who feel that tension, I have great sympathies that somebody can profoundly be engaged in writing and wanting to write and wanting to create the world of a dream within a book, and then feel very at odds with what a publisher might require to engage audiences in ways it's not simpatico. They feel like there's some part of them that is not for this. And so I would just say there's both there's great joy in sharing something that people respond to and, have this intrigue, are intrigued by, or, send me birding notes because they've read it. And I think some of that engagement has been really meaningful. But I think every writer is different, every publisher is different, and every iteration of the writer-publisher experience is very different. And I think there's something also about with this book being with a small press that that has a real sense of common engagement, that you're shouldering something together, and it and that feels profound.
Well, that's cool. I'm glad it's a good experience for you, and I hope it continues to be.
Thank you.
So I always have to ask authors what they can talk about in terms of what they're writing next. And I know, a lot of folks can't talk about, several aspects of that. Is there anything you can share with us in terms of your thoughts for the future?
Oh, I mean, I have files of ideas for next. And I think some of it depends on, if there's more in this direction. I would love to sort of pick up in a new decade with my group of friends in the novel. So I have several things in the potential works.
Good. I'm not surprised. Yeah. I would have been surprised if that wasn't the case, but I'm sure it'll be challenging to pick, right? Which do you focus on next? Maybe it'd be the Boston Bruins, or
so I lived for 17 years in Boston, and made a recent move to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and there are many different considerations here that would be interesting. So I'm just holding place, people, timing, all of it, to see what's next.
Oh, good. Well, maybe Las Vegas Knights, right? Are they the hockey team in Las Vegas now? They did pretty well this last season.
Well, not New Mexico.
Not New Mexico. No, I know, but I mean, Southwest at least.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think Albuquerque has any.
We've got some farm team action.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. Well, Lil, congratulations on, getting this book out. I know it was a labor of love for a long time, and I'm so glad that it's being well received, and I really wish you the best with it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.